We've always been a species eager to upgrade itself. Long before we dreamed of starships or supercomputers, we were already augmenting this human condition with eyeglasses, vaccines, writing, and tools. Each one was a quiet revolution, expanding the boundary of what a human could do. Now we stand at the threshold of something more intimate and far stranger, an age when the most transformative technologies are not held in our hands, but woven into our nerves, stitched into our senses, and paired directly with our thoughts. This is the dawn of implant culture, where the line between natural and engineered ability grows thin and blurry, and where the old question of what can a human achieve slowly becomes what you want your next upgrade to be. It's a future that promises more than just sharper senses or stronger limbs. It invites us to reconsider memory, emotion, skill, creativity, and even identity. It also asks us to wrestle with ancient anxieties about tampering with the mind, even as we spent millennia doing exactly that through culture, education, and technology. Today we'll explore how the coming wave of biohacks and brain mods may reshape our bodies, our societies, and our civilization itself, if we're brave enough to embrace the upgrades, wise enough to manage the risks, and determined enough to guide these tools toward a better tomorrow rather than a stranger one, to steer to a world of dreams rather than nightmares. The first layer, the implants already here. Implant culture is not science fiction anymore. It's the cardiologist Tuesday and the neurologist Wednesday. Millions of people already walk around with cybernetic enhancements that would look like magic a century ago. Cochlear implants can translate vibrations directly into neural impulses, giving sound to those who've never heard it. Retinal prosthetics can let light fall onto silicon instead of rods and cones, then send the resulting signals straight into the visual cortex. In many ways, these devices are not restoring lost senses, they're reinventing how the brain experiences them. We also have deep brain stimulators for Parkinson's, pacemakers for the heart, closed-loop insulin pumps that act as external organs, and brain-computer interfaces that let paralyzed individuals move robotic limbs or type messages simply by intending to do so. None of this is speculative, it's FDA paperwork and hospital floors. The hardware is bulky today, the resolution coarse, the interface is crude, but the trajectory is unmistakable. Just the first computers filled rooms and the first cell phones came with shoulder straps. Our early neural implants look primitive only because they're early. These technologies do not merely help people recover lost abilities, they demonstrate the brain is surprisingly willing to accept new forms of input and output. Given a few weeks of adaptation, neurons or neural networks reorganize themselves to treat digital information flowing through a wire as though it were a natural part of the body. That adaptability suggests our minds are far more modular than we once imagined, and ready, almost eager, for the next layer of plug-and-play enhancement. The early adoption phase. Niche enhancements. Once the technology works reliably for medicine, someone inevitably asks, "Can I get the deluxe version, please?" The early adoption era of implant culture will arrive long before brain chips become mainstream. It will begin with niche upgrades that appeal to enthusiasts, specialists, and anyone with a reason to justify being a bit sharper, quicker, or more aware than biology normally allows. Imagine augmented reality contact lenses that let you stitch virtual overlays directly into your field of vision, letting you read schematics, subtitles, or star charts without ever looking down. Picture memory assist implants that give you perfect recall for names, phone numbers, and deadlines, or tiny stimulators that gently tune your mood and focus like a personal emotional thermostat. No pharmaceuticals required. Early versions will be expensive and slightly awkward, the way a lot of early tech is, but they offer something irresistible, a tangible cognitive edge. I'd also note that many of these options are or will be available without implantation or surgery. For instance, transcranial magnetic stimulation, or TMS, is likely to offer a lot of non-implant options, and already does in some cases, scanning and magnetically influencing the brain rather than requiring a direct implant into the skull. Hobbyist biohackers will push the frontier further, often already experimenting with subdermal LEDs, magnetic sense implants, or Bluetooth-linked sensory mods that let them feel Wi-Fi networks or navigate by invisible fields. Professional users will follow. Surgeons with precision timing implants, astronauts with radiation monitoring follicles, students with optimized study sleep regulators. These early adopters will form the first communities built around elective augmentation, sharing firmware updates alongside fitness routines, discussing neural training exercises the way we now compare workout apps, and treating their implants less like medical devices and more like lifestyle gear. This phase isn't about rewriting what it means to be human, it's about expanding the toolkit, one small, practical, and slightly daring step at a time. Probably with a lot of fads and missteps, but still the warm-up act for far more strange futures, one where implants are not accessories but expectations, and where choosing not to upgrade may feel like choosing to stay offline in a world that runs on networks. Safety versus freedom, the great implant debate. Of course, once implants stop being purely medical and start being elective, the oldest conflict in human history resurfaces, the tug-of-war between freedom and fear. Nothing invites passionate debate quite like the prospect of tinkering with the mind. It's a very proper thing to debate, too, and implant culture will make that conversation unavoidable. Some will see the neural upgrades the next natural chapter of human evolution, the same way literacy or many other technologies have redefined what a normal human could be. Others will view them as a betrayal of our species' essence, a slippery slope where convenience becomes dependency and enhancement becomes coercion. We already explored these concerns in more depth in our Ethics of Transhumanism episode, but to quickly recap, unaltered human movements will spring up almost as soon as the first elective brain mods hit the market. For these groups, the concern may not be unnatural technology, but the social pressure to keep upgrading just to stay competitive. Is refusing the upgrade really a choice, or is it a quiet form of self-imposed disadvantage? Parents may worry about giving children a cognitive head start versus preserving their developing brains. Politicians will fret about national competitiveness and popular opinion. I could well imagine laws banning any elective augmentation till adulthood, and parents saving up for augmentation funds the way to do college funds, which, depending on the way the wind's blowing, might be something protected, like an IRA or a 529 plan. Philosophies will debate whether a modified mind is still authentically you, or whether identity is something that should remain off-limits to optimization. Meanwhile, regulators and corporations will argue over who gets to approve, monitor, or kill a firmware update to your hippocampus. If a neural implant glitches, is it a medical recall, or a software patch, or a civil rights violation? And in an era where malicious actors already hack phones, cars, and power grids, the idea of someone hacking a human being creates a whole new dimension of risk. But not a completely new one. You can't, after all, already hijack a human with a gun. A future where malware targets prosthetics or emotional modulators will force society to rewrite its rules for cybersecurity, because the firewall can't just protect your data anymore, it has to protect your thoughts. Yet for all this tension, humanity is not new to this. We argued about books corrupting the young, about cars being too dangerous, about computers replacing jobs, about the internet eroding social norms, and those were also worthy arguments, and there was no black and white wrong and right answer in many of these cases. Every age invents a new frontier, pushes a new boundary, and then panics as it crosses it. And we're often right to worry about Pandora's box, but we often cross the line or open that box anyway, because the possible benefits are simply too great to ignore. And so the debate won't stop the rise of implants. It will shape it, refine it, push it towards safer and more responsible paths, hopefully. That friction is uncomfortable, but it's also how we build the future without losing ourselves in the process. Implant Economics, when better brains become a market. As soon as technology touches the human mind, it also touches the wallet. The economics of implant culture will likely be messy, exciting, and occasionally absurd, because whenever humanity discovers a new frontier, someone will immediately try to sell naming rights, subscription plans, and deluxe collector's editions. Neural implants will be no different. At first, the cost will be high and demand uneven, with early adopters treating upgrades as prestige luxuries or professional investments. Actually, that may be second. There already is a lot of fringe biohacks going on, and they're not particularly expensive. I generally have a low opinion of most of these, and that has not changed in the last decade. I've discussed that before, but they do appear to be improving. Anyway, once the supply chain matures and manufacturing scales, the price curve will bend downward fast, just as it did with smartphones, sequencing genomes, and solar power. And for those curious, no, I do not have any biohacks or implants myself. Unless you count some teeth I lost in the army, and rare for an army veteran, I don't actually have any tattoos either. No piercings, and I've only ever dyed my hair once, so if my beard gets any grayer, I might start. Anyway, when those prices normalize into the retail range, that's when things will get complicated. Companies will experiment with business models that make your phone plan look quaint. Some implants may come with annual licensing fees or premium features unlocked by subscription. Rent your extra working memory for $9 a month, or pay to enable multilingual mode during international travel. Lease your equipment to get the best new one every 3 years, or buy this slightly used 3-year-old implant. There will be warranties, insurance coverage debates, and questions about whether your cognitive hardware counts as a medical device, a consumer gadget, or something in between. Employers might offer implant stipends as a hiring perk, leading to entire job markets where the baseline expectation is must be willing to upgrade. Black markets will also flourish, because not everyone wants to pay list price for the official, FDA-approved version of a creativity booster or emotional stability mod, or accept government-imposed limits on what's allowed. Illegal clinics in back alleys or orbital scrapyards will advertise cheap enhancements with questionable safety, hacked firmware, or experimental neural routines that haven't passed any regulatory review except for the technician's shrug. Resort islands with limited extradition treaties will specialize in discrete implants you can't get back home and that customs won't notice. And once implants become software-defined, piracy takes on a whole new meaning, with cracked neural apps spreading across enthusiasts like old MP3s, except these update the way your brain processes information. Think of any legal, moral, or social issue we have with performance-enhancing drugs, be they cognitive or physical, and assume these will apply to implants too, and probably more options as well. And economic inequality might deepen too. Access to cognitive upgrades may widen the performance gap between those who can afford them and those who cannot. A society where the wealthy can buy faster learning, better focus, or enhanced emotional control risks creating a self-reinforcing cycle of advantage. And we arguably already see this with a lot of pharmaceutical options or various technological widgets available to improve this or that performance. Policymakers will debate whether implants should be subsidized for students, military personnel, or workers in critical industries, and whether refusing upgrades is a private choice or a professional liability. To add to this, I tend to feel humanity's many counterplays to improving AI will be improving humans too. You may even have loyalist volunteers agreeing to extreme enhancements to ensure everyone else is safe from rogue AI and transhumans. And yet, in typical human fashion, the market will find equilibrium, just as literacy, electricity, and the internet began as elite privileges but grew into universal expectations. Implants will follow the same trajectory. Once the economic incentives align, once businesses see productivity gains, once education systems realize the advantage, once healthcare providers see the long-term savings, societies will bend toward wider access. That's not altruism, that's simple market gravity. Implant culture won't remain a luxury for long, it will become infrastructure. Get your tailored and premium dreams. Either pay a subscription per month or accept ads. I suspect you won't have any problem finding a marketing budget for those either. Once machines talk directly to the nervous system, cybersecurity stops being about stolen credit cards and starts being about stolen perception. It really adds a whole new layer to the concept of identity theft. A future full of implants means every human becomes a node on the world's most fragile network, one made of neurons instead of servers. It's not hard to imagine new forms of trouble this invites. A corrupted mood modulator could tank your motivation. A hijacked visual overlay might hide crucial warnings or inject phantom dangers, making you want to buy some product or vote for some person. A malicious actor targeting prosthetic limbs or exoskeletal frames could weaponize someone else's own body against them. And don't assume these are shadow hoodlums or corrupt governments and corporations either. I love cyberpunk and that's a real concern, but think about parents or spouses with easier access to your chip and fiddling around inside your brain. They may think it's for your own good maybe, as they see it, or maybe to engage in a form of high-tech gaslighting. Yet it's not all doom and gloom. Humanity has always built vulnerabilities and then engineered protections. We invented locks after we invented doors, firewalls after we built networks, helmets after we cracked all skulls. Implant culture will follow the same pattern. Just be cracking your skull intentionally to begin with. Neural firewalls will become standard, and your cognitive antivirus systems will learn your thought rhythms so they can flag anomalies before you do. The core challenge won't simply be protecting data, it will be about protecting identity, making sure the person at the controls is still you, not some invisible script trying to puppeteer your senses. In time, cybersecurity for the self might become as ordinary as brushing your teeth, a daily hygiene ritual to keep your mind clean, clear, and genuinely yours. The social shift, the rise of implant culture. Widespread implants won't just upgrade individuals, they reshape collective behavior. Communication becomes far more fluid when your thoughts can be translated into shared models instead of squeezed through the bottleneck of clumsy words. One of the earliest mass adoption augmentations probably won't be a brain chip at all, but something as simple as a smart camera, an external assistant that reviews your photos, tags the good ones, and lets you call them up on demand, whether directly through an implant or through smart glasses. It could be wearable, a pocket device, or even a friendly drone hovering at your shoulder. But once that's commonplace, stage 2 naturally follows, the ability to instantly flip a photo, diagram, or chart to someone standing beside you, as casually as pointing at a bird in the sky. Stage 3 brings privacy into the mix, with your devices automatically blurring or deleting images of anyone broadcasting a privacy signal, and onboard AI smart enough to avoid retaining embarrassing shots. They delete them or auto-blur them or correct them. After that, you're simply negotiating practical questions like how long short-term archives should be kept. For instance, long enough to assist investigators if a crime occurs, but short enough to protect everyday privacy. The same tools that make violations easier to imagine also offer new ways to safeguard rights, so it's better to picture the lifestyle shift rather than the pitfalls. Always remember, technology is a tool, therefore every technology is inherently dangerous and can be used to help too. Some may be more slanted in one direction or another, but the same creativity that lets us dream up new devices lets us dream up ways to better our lives with them, or to make them worse, of course. Change is the only certainty. When you can casually recall an event and blink share it to a friend, everything changes. The benefits to professional and social life are obvious. It makes today's Facebook and Instagram feel like stone tablets by comparison. Incidentally, the show is on Facebook, Instagram, and even TikTok if you want to connect with us there. We also have a great discussion forum on our Facebook group, not to be confused with my personal page, which is also public but mostly shares pictures of my family or me out with friends, not existential and futuristic chats. And once your augmentation lets you instantly pull up a stored memory, creativity becomes collaborative. Multiple minds can merge their sensory impressions into joint artwork. Education transforms when students can draw contextual data straight into their working memory, turning the classroom into something closer to an interactive dreamscape. Not everyone will adapt at the same pace, of course. Generational tension is inevitable. Children who grew up with neural overlays will treat them as naturally as today's kids treat touchscreens. Their elders, trained on pen, paper, and patience, may look at these cognitive shortcuts with suspicion. The etiquette for their use alone will spark entire social debates. Is it rude to leave your attention-tracking implant running during a conversation? Should you disclose that your emotional profile was artificially stabilized before a date? And when a friend shares a memory, is it acceptable to adjust the playback speed? Let me add a caveat there, though. The elderly are often seen as slow to adopt to new tech. This is a mostly justified but hardly universal stereotype, but I would tend to suspect that many of those growing less firm in mind or body or both will be a lot more willing to accept a chip meant to improve clarity or cognition. Psychologically, a potential gain that never becomes realized is way less painful than an actual loss, and most people become ever more accustomed to invasive and unpleasant medical treatments as time goes on and health declines. This show is a bit atypical for YouTube because our audience skews older than most. About 2/3 of our viewers are 35 and up, around the age when aches and pains start to linger, and roughly 10% are over 60, where regular checkups, medical poking and prodding, and a fistful of daily pills becomes routine. For that audience, certain ideas resonate more strongly if you can clearly demonstrate the technology exists, and then say something like, forget the aches and pains, the middle of the night wake-ups, the bifocals, and the discomfort driving after dark. Our procedure will sharpen your memory, let you run a decathlon, and restore to you what you were, only better, while keeping all the wisdom you earned the hard way. I think that's a deal a lot of people would be willing to take, if it was reasonably well tested and had no side effects worse than we're already used to on medications, and the impact of regenerated seniors on a civilization and current culture is almost impossible to calculate. I would say mostly beneficial, but as was seen in our life extension videos, that's debatable. Nor do I think we get as much resistance from religious groups as many expect. By and large, most are fine with modern prosthetics or even encourage research and funding for them. They cover deficits a person has. And also, by and large, most modern religions do not view humans as God's perfect creation, but a degenerate and damaged form of it, with lots of deficits worth trying to repair or mitigate. So I think we'd see a wide variety of responses from that quarter, not a knee-jerk no that sci-fi is fond of. Every great technological leap reshapes culture, and implant culture may be the largest shift since symbolic language, not because it changes what we think about, but because it changes how thinking itself happens. What emerges won't be hive minds or collective consciousness. Humans are far too individualistic for that, though you might get rare exceptions, but rather communities whose cooperation flows more smoothly, misunderstandings shrink, and shared experience becomes richer, stranger, and more intimate than anything our ancestors ever imagined. Minds in motion. Cognitive architecture as a design space. Let us look further ahead. With neural interfaces maturing, the human mind becomes not just something we use, but something we can design. Our brains already rewire themselves constantly. Implants simply give that plasticity a set of tools. Picture emotional palettes that let people dampen anxiety without flattening personality, or focus modulators that quiet intrusive thoughts during long work session, or when you're trying to go to sleep. We all have nagging thoughts we know we shouldn't be letting intrude on us during certain times, and practice pushing them aside with mixed success. But imagine you could just hit the snooze button on them or send them to your spam folder. Imagine learning scaffolds that accelerate comprehension by subtly adjusting your internal feedback loops, turning hours of practice into minutes of precision. Creativity, too, becomes a frontier. Dream modulating implants could let authors and composers wander through curated landscapes of imagination, storing the results as neural blueprints instead of dusty notebooks. Scientists might simulate hypotheses inside controlled mind spaces, forever running an experiment in the real world. None of this means losing our humanity. It means gaining the freedom to tune our minds with the same deliberation we apply to tuning a musical instrument. And a lot of this can already be achieved, sometimes imperfectly, through pharmaceuticals, meditation, practice, and experience. And as with instruments, the danger isn't that people will become uniform, it's that they'll become even more diverse. And that has many of its own benefits and pitfalls too. But for good or ill, the more tools we have to shape thought, the more widely our cognitive style may diverge. Implant culture will not homogenize humanity. It will amplify our variability, letting each mind carve its own architecture. Implant Maximalism. Full-stack upgrades. Farther down the timeline, implants cease being individual devices and instead form continuous meshes woven through the brain, linking every lobe with micron-scale precision. These are not gadgets, they are infrastructures. Skills can be installed like software packages, a la the Matrix, still requiring practice, but with scaffolding that makes learning flow more naturally. Language barriers fade as translation becomes a reflex. Even multitasking, that eternal human frustration, becomes feasible when auxiliary neural engines help hold and manipulate parallel streams of thought. This is not about abandoning biology, but enhancing its limits. Our neurons are extraordinary, but they evolved for survival on the savannas, not for operating orbital shipyards or analyzing black hole jets. A full-stack cognitive mesh would let humans keep pace with their own machines, maintaining agency in a world where intelligence, both artificial and augmented, is cheap, fast, and everywhere. The great fear that AI might eclipse us fades somewhat when we upgrade ourselves to meet it halfway, or blend our AI butler into our heads as a third brain lobe or appendage. Today we're looking at brain implants and human enhancement, the possibility that future upgrades might not just be something you install on your computer, but something you install in yourself. One creator who shares our show's approach to looking at technology from very different angles is Martin at TechAltar, breaking down the tech industry, how companies compete, why certain products succeed or fail, and the economic forces shaping the devices we all use. Another great show is Day Pass from Jason Slaughter of Not Just Bikes. In each episode he visits a new city with one challenge: buy a transit day pass and explore those real-world transit systems. When it comes to technology, we need to ponder the change it will have on a society, and for instance, biohacks will make a civilization much more robust to collapse. Something in my recent Nebula episode, Lazarus Protocols, explores and asks how civilizations might survive extinction-level disasters and rebuild afterward. You can find all of that on Nebula, where every episode of SFAA premieres early and completely ad-free. Use my link with a QR code to get 50% off an annual plan. Just $30 for the whole year. Post-Implant Society. Upgrades as life stages. Eventually, implants become as commonplace as watches or earrings or clothes. They are mundane parts of life. Children might receive early development mods that help with reading, math, or emotional regulation. Teens get interface seeds that grow with them, unlocking advanced learning capabilities as their brains mature. Adults select professional upgrade tracks, pilot packages that improve spatial mapping, medical modules that boost diagnostic intuition, emergency service kits that enhance perceptions under stress, and in later life, cognitive fortification implants slow dementia, stabilize memory, and preserve independence far longer than biology alone allows. These upgrades won't be universal at first. Some cultures will adopt them enthusiastically, others cautiously, and some hardly at all, and each is likely to pick and choose which ones they approve of. Just as literacy spread unevenly through history, implant literacy will produce widely different social landscapes depending on local norms, economics, and values, as with all other technologies. Again, certain implants will be more accepted than others, and by some cultures more than others. Periods of higher and lower confidence in them for the public will make progress seem like a stock market, usually up, but often down. The general trajectory is towards integration. Once people see loved ones recovering memory, avoiding decline, or gaining opportunities through neural augmentation, resistance will soften. Implants become not a departure from humanity, but a way of preserving it. The far horizon, when implants become civilization. On the deep future end of the arc, implants spill outward from individuals and braid together with our cities, networks, and fleets. A planetary infrastructure becomes aware, not conscious in a mystical sense, but coordinated on a scale no previous civilization could imagine. City grids respond to needs before they're spoken. Emergency systems react faster than human thought. Governance evolves too, assisted by transparent, cognitive tools that help citizens weigh policy trade-offs or simulate long-term outcomes before casting a vote. Beyond Earth, implant culture travels with us to space. Indeed, the term cyborg, originally coined as a portmanteau of cybernetic and organism, was developed with living in space in mind, when we assumed cocktails of medications or augmentations would be necessary to make that work. This isn't a single required package, though. At every step, there will be many different implants serving many of the same roles in various styles and degrees of effectiveness. People can choose the mix that works for them, that they are comfortable with, including a lot of non-implant parallels that get the job done, but maybe a bit slower or less smoothly than full integration would. It's not the options that are singular, it's every individual's unique combination of them. This also is not the singularity. It's something gentler, messier, and more human. A civilization where minds are not static objects but evolving participants in a shared adventure. A species learning to tune itself for the long voyages ahead. Humanity has never been shy about reinventing itself. We sharpened stones, tamed fire, stored knowledge, built engines, split atoms, and reached for the stars, all by extending our abilities with tools. Implants are simply another set of tools in that long lineage, ones that happen to work from the inside out. They will often challenge us, tempt us, and unsettle us. They also offer a chance to become wiser, healthier, and more capable than baseline biology alone allows, much like so much of our other, often controversial technologies. As we step into this era of biohacks and brain mods, the question isn't whether technology will reshape us. It already has. The question is whether we can guide that reshaping with courage, wisdom, and compassion. Because if we can, the coming age of implant culture won't just enhance our brains, it will enhance our humanity.